that's been shafted completely the last few expansions is Warlock, and I am happy to report that I think that this expansion's Warlock cards actually give Warlock potentially a couple of different directions that put them on the map. Starting with Midway Maniac. This is a 2-mana 1/5 demon with Taunt at common. Silverback Patriarch is rolling in his fucking grave. Like, this is an insanely great anti-aggro tool. It's good in Zoo. I can't see a world where you don't run this card in Zoo, especially since this expansion pushes a lot of strong demon synergy. And I think Demon Tribal Zoo Warlock will be a strong direction to push the class going forward. And a huge reason for that is because of free admission. It's a 3-mana spell, rare, draw 2 minions, and if they're both demons, reduce their cost by 2. So ideally, in the right deck, this is a -1 mana card draw spell. We all know how good Skull of Gul'dan is. This does not require the Outcast condition, and it's pretty easy to fill a deck just filled with demons as minions, especially with the support from this set. So I expect this card to see play in every Demon Zoo deck in Standard. Just a fantastic card. And you also have Minari Musher. Give a friendly demon plus your attack and lifesteal this turn. So you can even like aggressively tap and then buff your demons and give them lifesteal. Like, this is a 3-mana 3/4 with an insane amount of good upside. Like, if you want to push an archetype for an expansion, this is how you do it. You print efficiently statted minions that fit the theme, you print support cards that fit the theme, and you print payoffs that fit the theme, which we've seen for the first 2 cards in Warlock, which is just insane to think about. I mean, think about Warlock last expansion. They got completely shafted and are currently the lowest performing class according to HS Replay. Unsurprising to me. Wild is obviously a different story, but Wild Warlock will always be insane because they've just got, you know, the Kobolds and Catacombs era cards still in their kit. Ring Matron is a 6-mana 6/4 demon at common with Taunt and Death Rattle summon 2/3/2 imps. So before you laugh and think this card is trash, think about this in comparison to Savannah Highmane. Now, Savannah Highmane hasn't seen play for a long time, but this is currently going to be in a deck where you can tutor for it with free admission, and you can go free admission on turn 3 into this on turn 4, and that is back-breaking. Like, this is so difficult to deal with on turn 4, so much so that I think it might facilitate the Priest to run their Silence, and this will be a decent Silence target in Priest, but it is still a 6/4. I normally would look at an aggressively statted Taunt minion and think, oh, this is terrible. No, but I actually think this is the curve topper for this Demon Zoo deck, and one that you're happy to play as sort of like it's literally the high main for this deck. Next is something of a different flavor. We have Cascading Disaster. It's a 4-mana epic spell. Destroy a random enemy minion, corrupt, destroy 2, corrupt again, destroy 3. Again, it's not hard in control decks to corrupt cards. And in control Warlock, it's probably not going to be super difficult for you to get this corrupted to a point where you can easily destroy 2 minions, and then if you do it again, you destroy 3. And also, this is 4 mana, so it is easier to corrupt. Again, think about things like a Priest's Galakron. They run the Priest's Galakron partly for the value, but the battle cry of Galakron when invoked is not something to be sneezed at, and often is helpful for the Priest to take back a board, and that's what Cascading Disaster does. I mean, this is a deadly shot at a base level for 1 extra mana, which is fine, and then it becomes infinitely better if you corrupt it once, which is, like, again, not difficult to do in Warlock corrupt decks. So I expect corrupt control Warlock to also be a deck, and will be decent, depending on how aggressive the meta will be. Okay, here we have Ticketus. It's a 6-mana 8/8 demon at legendary. Battlecry, remove the top 5 cards from your deck, corrupt your opponent's deck instead. This being 6 mana is great. The earliest it will come down is turn 8 from the corrupted variant, which is fine because an 8 mana 8/8 that destroys 5 cards on your opponent's deck is really good. But sometimes you will just play this on turn 6, say fuck it, let the top 5 cards of your deck get milled just to play a 6 mana 8/8. But obviously you do want to be corrupting this card because you want to get it back with your Yasharaj and destroy 5 more cards from your opponent's deck. In Wild, this is going to be an interesting card shenanigan-wise with Bran, because you'll be able to copy the Battle Cry and destroy 10 cards from your opponent's deck at once, which is kind of ballistic. Again, Ticketus is another, like, not super difficult to corrupt card that does push Warlock into that sort of corrupt control deck, which I think will be interesting to see for sure. Next up is Deck of Chaos. This card I think is actually genuinely the worst in the set. It's a 6 mana legendary spell. Swap the cost and attack of all minions in your deck. I've gone on a rant about this in Discords, but the central premise of this card is that to get the maximum benefit of this card, you have to run a bunch of garbage minions in your deck, which sucks. And even if you are running garbage minions in your deck with the potential of having insane upside from them, you still have to draw the Deck of Chaos before drawing the garbage minions that you have in your deck. There's no way to tutor for this card in Warlock unless you want to play Plot Twist, which again is garbage, right? Like, just all of the ideas to run in the Deck of Chaos just make me upset, because I can't believe people are going to try this card. But hey, at least I'll know I'll get some free wins potentially, or blown out by, you know, bullshit random draws by Deck of Chaos on day 1. But I don't think it will take very long for this card to be realized as complete trash. Worst card in the set by far. Next up we have Fire Breather. It's a 4 mana 4/3 demon at rare with a battle credit to deal 2 damage to all minions except demons. So when this card was revealed, a lot of people were like, it's not that good, you know, dealing 2 damage to all minions except demons. I mean, that is Demon Wrath with 1 extra mana for a body. But then they printed all this extra demon synergy that we got revealed in the last day, and this card suddenly went from being like an okay but maybe slightly underwhelming card to something potentially insane in a zoo build, right? Like, think about this as a zoo card where you only run demons, and importantly enough, this is a demon itself, so it won't feel the restriction. Like, this is crazy good, because what Zoo wants to do is take control of the board, and if you're doing like a one-sided board clear of a 4 mana 4/3, this is super insane in Zoo. I don't think you run this in control decks. Like, you don't need to. You have Frenzied Furrowing. What, Frenzied Furrowing? Crazed Netherwing, which is already better than this. But in this, like, Demon Zoo tribal deck, this is insane. Wicked Whispers is a 1 mana rare spell. Discard your lowest cost card and give your minions +1/+1. There's no other discard synergy in Standard that really makes this work. Like, it's the same problem with Deck of Chaos. You have to run bad cons in your deck to make this work. Whether or not this will see play in Wild Discard Warlock remains to be seen. I think it might, because like, it's a targeted discard. It buffs on-board minions, which will matter sometimes. But yeah, I'm not sure where this will end up. It just seems kind of random to get this card in this expansion. Sometimes you can potentially high roll this and get like the Bone Web Egg and buff the Death Rattle. But that won't happen all that much. Finally, we have Revenant Rascal. It's a 3 mana 3/3 epic with the battle cry to destroy a mana crystal for both players. So this is kind of like Cult Neophyte. Except I think it's more awkward than Cult Neophyte because it's a symmetrical effect. This card also only really has impact on crucial key turns, so it'll be meta dependent. People were talking about how like this will see play in Zoo, but I actually don't think this will see play in Zoo because it isn't a demon, and I think you want only demons in Zoo going forward, at least with the current cards you have from this expansion. Again, like this effect isn't that great because yeah, while you're playing a 3 mana 3/3 and destroying mana crystals, your opponent will then take their turn after you. So while theoretically you have the initiative like to play this card, you don't want to be playing this turn 5, turn 6, turn 7 because it's a 3/3 and that's awful. Unless you're disrupting an opponent's key mana turn. But even then, your opponent will just get that mana crystal right back. So if they were at 6 mana last turn, they're going to be at 6 mana this turn again. And while that kind of sucks, it's not going to be that big of a deal, I think, for them overall. I really don't think this is impactful enough as a combo disruption tool, and I think Cult Neophyte will just be better because it's cheaper and it's one-sided. Yeah, that's all the Warlock cards. Why is it not a demon? I think there was a lore reason that some nerds on Reddit were talking about. I don't know what it is, though. In terms of the overview for Warlock, this is how you turn a class from low win rate to high win rate, is that you think about established archetypes and you give them support for those archetypes. You give them, you know, just good, solid minions for the archetype, like Midway Maniac. You give them support cards like Free Admission, which help you sort of get there to get to your, you know, minions that synergize. And then you have payoff cards, which also fit into the archetype, like Minari Mosher, which is really insane. Again, like, there will be some games where you free admission on turn 3 into Ring Matron on turn 4, and you will just not be able to deal with a Ring Matron and lose. Or you will deal with the Ring Matron and you're still dealing with a 6/4 worth of stats on board because of the 2/2 imps that it spawns. And then you also have, like, good control Warlock cards in Cascading Disaster and Ticketus, which also sort of effective, you know, in control decks, but push them towards new sort of, you know, design space with Yasharaj because of the new corrupt mechanic, which I think will be interesting, and maybe potentially frustrating to play against. Attack higher health than it has taunt. It wants to die. Well, I mean, if you think about this as like a high main, like compare this to high main, this is way better than high main, and the taunt is still interesting, right? Like, it leaves behind 6/4 worth of stats when it dies, so it's not actually that bad that it has an aggressive stat line, especially since it's a curve topper in Zoo. Just think of it like Savannah high main. Okay. Warrior, I think, is going to be difficult to evaluate overall. They've got a lot of support for an interesting new mid-range list, support for N'Zoth, and nothing else for existing archetypes. Anyway, we're starting with Stage Dive. This is a 1-mana rare spell. Draw a rush minion, and if you corrupt, you give it +1/+1. So I think this is a really cheap corrupt card, but I don't think it's that good. Like, compare this to Town Crier from Witchwood. Like, Town Crier was awesome because it was a 1-mana 1/2 that drew you a rush minion. This draws you a rush minion but doesn't develop a body on the board. It does buff the rush minion, which is kind of nice, but I mean, what rush minion do you really want to buff with this that's super impactful? Can't really see this one being used, even though it is rush draw, and there is a big rush theme in the set. Next up is Bumper Car. It's a 2-mana 1/3 mech at rare. It has rush with a death rider. Add 2 1/1 riders with rush to your hand. So while, again, I think that there is a mid-range rush-based warrior list coming together, Bumper Car I don't think will be in it, even though it gives you 3 rush minions for a small sort of, you know, I'm assuming the 1/1s are 1 mana. Yeah, they are. So you pay 4 mana, you get 3 rush minions, which is interesting for ETC. But again, like, you want good rush minions in your deck, and this just isn't a good rush minion straight up. It's kind of terrible, actually. Minefield is a 2-mana common spell. Deal 5 damage randomly split among all minions. So I guess this is the closest thing we get to Bomb Warrior support in this expansion, because Bomb Warrior obviously doesn't run a bunch of minions. So this will often just be a one-sided deal 5 damage randomly split among all minions in the early game. But this does hit your own minions, which is sometimes pretty awkward and just not efficient. Minefield, I think, might see some inclusion in Bomb Warrior as just cheap early removal. But no, I'm not sure about it. Again, like, Bomb Warrior is a pretty refined deck, but I don't even know if Bomb Warrior will see play in the following expansion. ETC and hand buff Bumper Cars. Hand buff? Hand buff? This man said hand buff. Stagehand is a 2-mana 3/2 mech at common. Battlecry, give a random minion a hand +1/+1. I mean, hand buff sucks. Again, the only good hand buff cards that we've ever seen are 2 mana 1/1 that buffed every minion in your hand by +1/+1. Smuggler's Run, which did the same thing for 1 mana, and that was in a class after it got access to Christology, and Mechs, which could stack the buffs together. And the only other one was Imprisoned Scrap Imp, which, spoilers, was a Warlock card that you could just fill your hand with cards, and then you wait for the Dormant to go off, and that was insane. Stagehand is just terrible. Like, I mean, yeah, okay, theoretically, it's a 2 mana 4/3. It's not good enough. It's also a mech for N'Zoth, but you don't want to be resurrecting a 2 mana 4/3 with your N'Zoth. This card is trash. Hand buff, like, I should just look at any hand buff card that we see coming up, which is not many left, to be honest. Just be like, lol, hand buff, trash, you know? Like, hand buff has never been good. Next up is Feat of Strength. It's a 3 mana rare spell. Give a random taunt minion in your hand, +5/+5. Lol, hand buff. Complete trash. Like, what are you even hitting with this? Like, a Tomb Warden? That's so bad. Again, where do you put this card? This is just no good whatsoever. Good lord. Warrior got dicked on this expansion? I kind of agree. Next up, we have Sword Eater. It's a 4 mana common pirate. It's a 2/5 with taunt and a battle cry to equip a 3/2 sword. So this actually isn't that bad. You know, like a 2/5 with taunt is okay. Equipping a 3/2 sword is fine. I think Sword Eater will be interesting. It is a taunt pirate, which I guess, do you run it for N'Zoth? Probably not, right? Like, a 2/5 with taunt is not that good. I guess if you're summoning a lot of other minions, it makes it better. I don't know. I mean, a 3/2 sword is worth, like, approximately 2 mana. So, what, is this like a 2 mana 2/5 pirate with taunt? It's okay. Tent Trasher is a 5 mana 5/5 dragon at epic with rush. It costs 1 less for each friendly minion with a unique minion type. So even with 1 unique minion type, this is a 4 mana 5/5 with rush, which is like which is fine, right? Like, you would happily pay a 4 mana 5/5 with rush. But I do think it's kind of greedy to expect this to be anything more than that, unless you've already played your N'Zoth. But I mean, if you've already played your N'Zoth, do you really need a 0 mana 5/5 with rush? I don't think so. Like, probably not, right? I think this is interesting in, like, pirate decks, for example. Like, in Pirate Warrior, this is just a 4 mana 5/5 dragon with rush. That's pretty good. And if you have a lot of, like, menagerie stuff, maybe. But no, I don't know if Tent Trasher sees it. There are better dragons you can get. But it might allow, like, N'Zoth Warrior to see some play. But again, like, is it good enough? Or do you run other dragons? I mean, Deathwing Dragonlord is still in Warrior, and that is much better to resurrect with N'Zoth, even though it doesn't have fast stats, because 12/12 in stats is way better than 5/5. And I'm assuming if you're playing N'Zoth, you have other things that go along with it, like taunts and other rushes, since Warrior has access to mechs and pirates and etc, etc. I do like Tent Trasher, but I'm not sure if it sees play in the N'Zoth deck, because there are potentially better dragons you can run. I mean, the redundancy is always good in decks like these, where you just want to have things to resurrect off of your N'Zoth. But I don't think N'Zoth Warrior is going to get there. I think Warrior is going to have to stick with bombs, because they really got kind of shafted this expansion. Ringmaster's Baton is a 2 mana 1/3 epic weapon. After your hero attacks, give a mech, dragon, and pirate in your hand +1/+1. That's a hand buff. Really slow hand buff. If you manage to have all 3 tribes in your hand, like, that is decent value. That's 9/9 worth of stats. But you're running this in a menagerie build, right? And it's not like they're going to get the stats after they're resurrected with N'Zoth. So do you want to win with them initially with the hand buff, or do you want to win with N'Zoth? Like, where's the line for Ringmaster's Baton? You can set this and forget it, which is okay. And you have Corsair Cash to tutor this from your deck, which is fine too. But, like, there are better weapons in Warrior. Like, Reaper Scythe is better. You have, Shield of Azzinoth, which is better. I think Ringmaster's Baton doesn't get there, even in the ideal menagerie bomb, like in the menagerie Warrior list. Like, this is just not good enough. Next is Ringmaster Watley. He's a 5 mana 3/5 legendary battlecry draw, mech dragon, and pirate. So, you pair this with the baton. Okay, I get it, Blizzard. That's fun. This is legitimately good card draw. The Curator saw play and was 2 mana more. Admittedly, it had taunt. But I mean, this is cheap enough where like drawing 3 cards is usually pretty good, especially since this is targeted draw. So this is probably just good in Control Warrior, even outside of potential N'Zoth shenanigans, because they do run Mechs Dragons and potentially Pirates in that deck, right? Like you have Risky Skipper, you have Deathwing Dragon Lord, and I'm sure you can find a mech. If I'm not thinking of one right now, I'm sure they will put a mech in that deck. Like they could even run Omega Devastator, right? Like it's not that bad. You know, Ringmaster Watley might just be good enough to see play in that deck. I think it's hard to say whether or not N'Zoth support cards like Watley here for Menagerie builds will be good now. But the thing is that N'Zoth will always be relevant as long as it's in the standard format, because there will always be new cards printed with tribes, right? So like this time next year, we might be seeing some insane beasts printed in Warrior, some insane other mechs, dragons, pirates. God, even a neutral totem might be good, you know, by that time. I'd say keep an eye out for anything that potentially works with N'Zoth, because you've got a whole year of potential expansions to come out for N'Zoth to be good. So just because N'Zoth isn't good now doesn't mean anything. Good cover with the previous weapon? Ideally, yeah, but the weapon is still bad. And finally, we have ETC God of Metal. It's a 2-mana 1/4 legendary minion. After a friendly rush minion attacks, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. I think this is the cornerstone of this mid-range rush warrior deck that comes together, and you run things like Restless Mummy, Playmakers, ETC, Broomsticks, and you just run like a general mid-range package, and you use ETC like for value, just to like, you know, reach for damage and try and kill your opponent. But yeah, 2-mana 1/4 is a decent stat line, and there are some like weird combos that people have been talking about with this card that I think, I mean, it might just be good enough with like a Restless Mummy and a Playmaker, right? Like that's 9 mana. You could even get like another 1-mana rush minion in there, like a Broomstick, and that's it. You can also use if you can damage this with a Pen Flinger, and then you go Bloodsworn Mercenary, Broom, and then each of your ETCs will deal 2 damage, so every rush minion you play does 6 damage. If you can value trade those damaged ETCs, they'll each deal 6, the Broom deals another 6, both the Bloodsworns deal 6, that's enough to potentially kill your opponent. So, I don't know if the rush mid-range warrior deck will get there, but I think watch out for ETC and the rush support that currently exists in Warrior and that has been printed in this set. Overall, Warrior kind of got shafted. You have the rush support in Warrior, you have the Menagerie support with Watley and Ringmaster's Baton, and you have some good Menagerie targets like Tent Trasher and Sword Eater. But then you also got some trash cards like Feat of Strength and Stagehand, which are just like clunky, not great hand buff cards. And as we already know, hand buff never sees play unless it is extremely cheap and efficient and easy to use, where the benefits for the hand buff outweigh the loss of tempo of actually playing the hand buff card.